Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is such a privilege. And it's so cool that I can be in Lutherville, Maryland, and right there with you. So I know a lot of people are really zoomed out, and the zooming does get a little old, but it's also a beautiful thing, right? This is really great. So here I am in Maryland saying hello to you. And first of all, thank you so much to Texas Parent to Parent. What a great organization. You're making this all happen. And Jeff and Cinda, thank you both so much. You guys are amazing. I just feel so lucky to be a part of this. It's so important, and not many people are doing this, and I think it's really needed. So this is a real privilege for me, and I want to thank you all. So the first message that I have is that very message, but it's broader. Thank you. Thank you. And the reason I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart is thank you for what you do. Thank you for all of you supporting folks with intellectual disabilities. Thank you for those who are supporting the supporters. Thank you, all of you, family members. Thank you for hanging in there. It is such a tough time. I know. And if I told you a year ago that this is what you were going to be doing, that you would have to be Zooming everything, that you would be wearing masks everywhere you went, that you would have to be taking care of people in the ways that you're taking care of people, you probably would have said, oh, no way. No way, I can't do that. Oh, I would definitely quit. But you haven't quit, and you're doing it. And it's amazing. So thank you so much. You know, and like so many people say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we didn't know. We thought it was a sprint. Remember when it first started, and we're like, okay, well, maybe we can make it till June. All right, well, we're gonna have to go all the way to June. It's gonna be tough. And then June came. Okay, we're opening up. Okay, we're closing back up partially. Okay, we're opening. Okay, we're closing. Okay, and here we are. Here we are, and in a very historic time. So thank you so much for all of you and for all you are doing, because COVID has its own trauma, right? There's big T trauma, the type of trauma we all know is really tough. And then there's little t trauma. And the little t traumas are all those little adjustments we've had to make, all the things we've had to give up, all the little hurts, all the factors that have changed our lives so radically. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the big T traumas first and how they're affecting us. I'm going to talk about the little t traumas as well. And then we're going to talk about ways to cope, how we've been coping, and ways we can make it through this last lap, right? We can do it, we can make it, and how we can just keep going. So first and foremost, I want to take a minute and to really honor those whom we've lost. So I know many of you have lost a relative, or those of you who haven't lost someone directly, you know someone who's lost someone. You know, here in Maryland, which is a fairly small state, we've lost 42 people with disabilities, 42 people in provider agencies. We don't know who we've lost who might be with families, but we know just in provider agencies, we've lost 42 people. And that's devastating. That's devastating. And we've lost staff. And that's a big heartbreak. So I want to take a moment of silence. And in order to have that silence, I'm going to ask everybody to mute. Thank you. And a moment of silence to just really remember and honor those wonderful lives that were cut short way too soon. Thank you. Thank you. So this is trauma. This is big T trauma. And then not only does it bring up the loss and the grief, not only does it bring up and do we see what we're going through now and really upset us, it's old stuff that comes up too. So I was in the grocery store. I think it was probably in April. And, you know, I was masked up and I saw this woman with Down syndrome and she was pushing the cart and she was with her mom. And, you know, I wanted to say something. I wanted to just, you know, acknowledge that she was helping her mother. And I was like, wow, that's great. You're helping your mom, you know, from 6 feet apart. And she turned to me, big brown eyes, and she said, my father died. Just like that. Those were her first words. Oh, and I felt so horrible, like, oh no, oh, I'm so sorry. And her mother shook her head. She said, he died 20 years ago. Right. And then she said, so this girl went right back to her biggest trauma in her life as she was witnessing the trauma around her. So many people have been triggered by this, right? And then she went to her worst trauma, and then she went to her most recent trauma. And this is like an exchange in the grocery store. And she said, and I lost my job. I lost my job at Michael's. And she had a shirt that said Michael's. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And, you know, I just saw the complex levels of trauma that this has brought us. And for folks that were already traumatized, right? And that loss and that grief, a lot of people are re-experiencing. And then there's been such tragedies. And speaking of tragedies, we've witnessed during this time some really horrific murders. So not only have we been dealing with COVID, it was a time of great, you know, tragedy. So I have a friend, and she has 2 sons who are Black, and she's always telling me how she's so worried, like, how do I prepare them? How do I let them know that these really bad things can happen? And, you know, how do I let them know when they're not safe, and when they are safe? How do I even know? What do we do? And she said something to me that was very encouraging. She said, you know, people have been watching, and people have always watched some horrible things go on. But because we're all home, because we've all been so focused, we actually saw. Between that and people's cameras, their phones, right? And so we saw the murder of George Floyd right in front of us. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And that's another trigger as well, because anyone who's experienced racism, this is very triggering. I was sitting with my 2 girlfriends on our deck in the summertime. Now it's too cold. I wish I were in Texas where it's nice and warm. Although last week you guys had cold weather. But so I was sitting with my girlfriends, both whom are Black, on the deck, and they both, this was right after the murder of George Floyd, and they both were so freaked out, understandably, but they were both talking over and over and over again about when they were little girls in Baltimore City and there were riots. So there were horrible riots back then, and they were both describing the terror of being a little kid and seeing tanks roll down the street where they had sent in the National Guard. And they were like right back there. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're traumatized and they're in that loop of re-experiencing. So this has been a triggering time, a difficult time on so many levels. And if you've experienced racism or discrimination in any way, shape, or form, it's been tough because it's triggering. And we need to take care of each other. We really need to take care of each other and understand that nobody is at their best. And most people are triggered in one way or another at some point. Because, you know, when there's a part of our brain called the amygdala. And it's the part that takes pictures of scary things and emotionally strong things. So it's not always scary. Like if you smell a wonderful smell and all of a sudden you're back in your grandma's house, like, oh, those were the cookies my grandma made. Or if you had that kind of grandma, I didn't, but whatever, right? And we're right back there in that moment. You've probably all had that experience. And this part of our brain called the amygdala is what they call the implicit memory. And we needed that to survive back in the days when we were cavemen, right? So we were cavemen in the jungle. And there's a furry thing, right? Here we are all hanging out, having a nice day in the field, and a furry thing comes up. We're like, oh, isn't that pretty? And the furry thing eats one of our kids. Oh my God. So we get a name for it. It's a lion. And the next time we see it, we remember, oh, that's the furry thing. We've got to either fight it and kill it, or we got to get out of there and get the kids out of there, or we have to pretend we're dead so he won't eat us. And that part of our brain, the amygdala, would protect us by taking pictures of what's dangerous and then releasing chemicals that enable us to fight or flee or freeze. And right now, many of our amygdalas are flashing. We're seeing things on television like 280,000 people who have died. We're seeing horrible stories, and we can't fight or flee, really. I mean, maybe we can in small amounts. Maybe we're all kind of arguing with each other. That's definitely happening. You know, we're getting grouchy sometimes, right? We'd like to flee, but we're kind of stuck at home, which makes it even more compounded. And so many of us are freezing, right? We're kind of shutting down. Have you noticed yourself just sitting in front of the television and not remembering what you just saw? Or going into a room and not knowing why you're there? That's actually what I was doing before COVID, but you know, but like that, all that just dissociation, like not being present, not being there. It's a trauma response. So like I said, there's big trauma, but there's the little trauma too. And the reality is that post-traumatic stress disorder, we can have it in all different bits. We don't have to have full blown. We can have it in all degrees. And you can have a small degree of it. And I think that COVID has brought its own degree of post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, I went to El Paso right after the shooting. It was very heartbreaking because I had been there before talking about trauma, and they asked me to come back. And people were so traumatized. And it was trauma of the community. There was an impact on that entire community. And I did several trainings. I did 3 different trainings with groups of about 50 people. And the thing that impacted people the most, it was so horrible. So many people said to me that the shooter went over to a policeman really proud of himself and said, I didn't shoot any white people. And 90% of the people that I was encouraging and training were Latinx. And that trauma was so profound and so deep on top of that trauma of the killing. And the people that they were supporting were totally traumatized as well. In fact, the group, I met with one group that all worked in one day program that was right near the Walmart. And that was their weekly excursion. Everyone would save their money and then go to the Walmart every week. Nobody wanted to go to the Walmart. But that was a community trauma. And that was my first realization of how trauma, like I knew it intellectually, but just seeing the community. And then, you know, having dinner at night at the bar, which is where I like to hang out. But, you know, everybody wants to tell their story. Everybody's talking about what they went through and what they saw. And then having lunch with people I was training, and they're telling me their stories. And all I could say was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because it was a traumatized community. And here we have a traumatized nation, and we have a traumatized world. But, you know, America has been so impacted. So all of us are affected. And, you know, the one thing I think we've all realized is that people with intellectual disabilities, they may have an intellectual disability, but it doesn't mean they're stupid. They're very smart and they get it. And that trauma is right there for them. Very, very tough, right? Tough for all of us. So this is a community trauma. And let's look at the symptoms of PTSD. And we may be going through little bits of it. We may have it in our communities. We have it in our country, you know, and we're going to be dealing with this for a while. We're going to be dealing with the fallout of the trauma of COVID, even after we all get our shots. Yay for the shots. And then we can hang out together and do shots. I like saying that. We probably won't, but we might need some. But the reality of this impact is far-reaching. And I think it will be with us for some time. So the first, I want to look at the symptoms of trauma as they're laid out in the DSM-5, because, you know, I'm a psychologist and I've written some books about trauma, and this is my field, and particularly trauma of folks with disabilities. And I've been seeing these symptoms in so many people. I do therapy with folks with disabilities. I have a number of people I'm doing individual therapy with, and I have several groups that I'm working with as well. And I just see these symptoms over and over again, as well as with my friends. So first one is re-experiencing. You know, we get in that loop, so that, like that young woman in the grocery store, she was boom, right back to when her father died, re-experiencing it. You get stuck in this loop, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So many people are going back to past traumas and re-experiencing it. Reoccurring thoughts, dreams. So I keep hearing, I don't know if you all have heard some of these dream specialists who've been talking, in particular, there was a woman from Harvard who did a talk about the dreams during COVID. And she was saying so many people have been contacting her and talking to her, and they're actually now doing some research, because so many people have been talking about having very bizarre dreams, like we were talking about earlier. And how many of you are having strange dreams, right? For me, it's been since COVID, months and months. And oftentimes our dreams show us our fears. So this woman was saying, you know, people have contacted her saying they're having reoccurring dreams about being in crowds and no one's wearing a mask, and then getting sick. And, you know, this is a community trauma again. And a symptom of that is that re-experiencing, which can come up in dreams. And just to distort reality. The thing with us is that we humans, we have our conscious mind and our frontal lobe that kind of plans and organizes everything. And then we have our subconscious that has created the constructs of reality. So there's different boxes, right, that we see things in, and we have our categories. And so a year ago, you woke up, you went to work, you got lunch, you came home, you knew what you were going to do, and you could plan everything out. All of a sudden, mid-March, that rug was pulled out from under you. And you didn't know every day what you were doing, right? And then we were talking about, okay, it's the new normal. But then that normal changed. And then another normal came. And then another normal came. And we're open, we're closed, we're partially open. And then, I mean, those of you with kids, oh my goodness, my heart goes out to you. So you're trying to plan every day. I don't know how you're doing it. You know, so everything is upside down. And so our subconscious can't organize things and put them in those neat boxes, those constructs. So that subconscious comes out in our dreams, and things are jumbled and confused, and our fears come out, distortions come out. And then during our waking times, our brain is working overtime, and it's exhausting. So you might find yourself very tired and not know why. You might find the people that you're working with or supporting very irritable and agitated. This isn't easy for anybody, and nobody is at their best. Nobody's at their best right now. It's a tough time. Hypervigilance is another symptom of trauma. We find people organizing things, like all of a sudden I have become the cleanest person on earth. I never really cared how clean my kitchen was, but I am scrubbing every corner. I ran out of paper towels, and you would have thought it was a national emergency. I was like, oh my God, I need paper towels. We don't have paper towels. How can this be? That's a symptom of trauma, hypervigilance. Negative alteration, cognition, and mood, the next one. That a lot of words for a sense of impending doom. How many people have you talked to who've said, well, this will never, ever, ever go away. This is always going to be horrible. It's not going to be okay. It's never going to be okay. That's a symptom of trauma. It is going to change. We are going to get vaccinated. It's going to take a long time, but things will change. But many people that I talk to, and many of the folks that I work with, have that sense of impending doom. Like, oh, and it's only going to get worse. And I have, folks I work with that are just telling me they're sure they're going to get COVID and die. And I'm like, no, just stay in your house. You'll be okay. It's a tough time. That sense of impending doom is actually a symptom of trauma. And then finally, hyper-arousal, being really hyped up. Remember that amygdala is flashing. So when you saw that lion, your brain filled you up with chemicals so you could run and fight and do. And so now we're seeing a lot of lions and our brain is filled up with chemicals, but we can't fight, we can't run, we can't make it better. We're just waiting it out. So that's very difficult for the human brain. I have somebody I'm working with now who I do teletherapy with, who's broken 2 computers and 3 cell phones. He just broke one last week. And that makes teletherapy really hard. So yeah, his poor father keeps buying him new phones. I email his dad, can we get another phone? Because he gets very agitated and he says, my family's gonna all die from COVID. I saw it on TV, everybody's gonna get it. And he gets so agitated, he breaks things. Property destruction. So much of the property destruction I've seen with folks with disabilities has been out of fear and that hyper-arousal symptom, not because they want to hurt someone or hurt you or manipulate or break things or do something to get attention, because they are so triggered, because they're full of fear, their brain is freaking out and they feel unsafe, and those chemicals have to go somewhere. That's why I'm a big proponent of exercise. Getting it out of the body is so important. So I know in a lot of homes, people have been taking walks together. And I know one mom who had 3 kids, one with a disability, set up an obstacle course in her backyard. And every week she changes it and has them do races. Whatever we can do to help people get it out of the body, because the body stores it up. That's really critical. 2 categories of trauma, according to Terapu, the ones we see in the DSM, and then that subcategory of being dissociated, completely not being present. So again, you might find yourself really checking out. Or how many of you have a friend that you used to talk to all the time that barely ever gets back to you, barely ever talks to you, doesn't respond? There's a lot of people that are really shut down because of this as well. Right? That's another trauma response. And on top of it, we have the loneliness. And this is particularly relevant for our field, right? David Petoniak talks about how loneliness is the outstanding problem in the world of disabilities. I mean, how many of you know someone that talks all the time about wanting a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and yet they've never had one that they actually dated, even though they may have said, yeah, this person at the day program is my boyfriend or girlfriend. And that loneliness is deep and it's impactful. And now people are so isolated. So that's the big theme in all the groups. I've been doing groups with the Arc of Central Chesapeake over here in Maryland, Zooming groups. They were wonderful. They were able to get people devices, which made a big difference. And we started in July. But the theme of our groups over and over is, when can I see my friends? When can I go to the day program? When can I see my whole family? Right? Over and over again. So that, that loneliness is so pervasive, and it's even more impactful now when people who are already isolated are further isolated. So it's very tough. According to Lieberman, a neuropsychologist, he says our brain is wired for 2 things. Now, basically, our brain completely lights up. You know how they do these brain scans and they'll see which part of the brain is working for what type of situation, right? So, oh, your language brain, here's your expressive area, and here's your emotion, and ding, 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 it lights up. There's 2 things for which your brain will completely light up in all areas. The first is to meet your physical needs. So we know that, like when you're hungry, all you can think about is food, right? I can't talk. I've got to eat now, right? Food becomes my priority because my brain tells me you're going to die of starvation in 5 minutes if you don't eat. I have issues. But our brain focuses on meeting our physical needs, right? That's number 1. Number 2, what lights the whole brain up, what focuses everything, is our need for social interaction. And he showed that. So his research proves how much people need each other. and how difficult it is to be isolated. Thank goodness for technology, but not all of our folks have technology, right? Not all of our folks can even tell you their phone number, let alone be talking to their friends. So I think the more we can find ways to get people technology, phones, computers, Zooming, the better we can make this in our last lap, the better we can get through this. It's so critical. And Eisenberger did a study where she looked at how being excluded actually causes physical pain, like it's physically impacted. If you are in a situation where everybody is a part of things and you're taken away, she did research like that, every single participant, when they're removed from a situation, their brain fires in the area of physical pain, right? Because we're wired up to be together. So back when we were cavemen, you know, the lion's gone, we're hanging out, and we're probably getting on each other's nerves. And so we have to be wired up to want to be together, because otherwise we just go in our cave and forget about each other, and then our species would have died out. So our brain is wired up to be included. So exclusion causes physical pain. That's a biological reality that has kept us, you know, going as a species, but is very devastating when you are excluded. And, you know, speaking of hooking up, Lieberman and Eisenberger got married. That's a neuropsychologist little romance, huh? I read that in Rolling Stone, a little bit of gossip. So everybody needs to, not everybody needs to hook up, but what we need are friends, and we need relationships. And there's studies that show that relationships actually inoculate us against trauma. There was a study in Iraq of people who developed PTSD and people who didn't, who had both gone through the same trauma. And the ones who did not develop PTSD, even though they had a lot of trauma, were ones who were Skyping and talking to lots of friends and family. And they're the ones that had those connections and those, you know, relationships, and those relationships inoculated them as they faced the trauma. And that was number one. And the other piece that helped them was their relationship with each other within their units. So the ones that didn't feel like they could trust the people in their unit and didn't have a lot of friends and family were way more likely to develop PTSD, and in terrible ways. Like there were some suicides, as we know now, you know, some really devastating things. So, you know, human beings need to be connected. We need to have friends. And the greatest thing we can do right now is pick up your phone and call a friend, text, reach out, set up a Zoom. So many things we can do for each other, and such a crucial time to reach out to those who are lonely and to support. I've talked to a lot of families, and one right here where, you know, they've brought their adult child with a disability home. And I think that's so beautiful and so wise, because it's hard when people are living independently and isolated. It's very tough. So, and I was talking with somebody yesterday with a disability who his support staff got COVID. She lived with her sister and her mom passed, and she can't come anymore. And he's so worried about her. He's so sad about the mom. And this reality is hitting on every level. So now more than ever, people need friends, right? And we need each other, all of us, and particularly those with disabilities. Bessel van der Kolk says, you know, there's little T traumas and big T traumas, and with COVID, and the little T's, you know, like I said earlier, but what he calls pre-trauma conditions are not being able to predict what's going to happen. Very tough for our frontal lobe. Remember that brain that's planning, that knew what you were doing a year ago, and when you got up and drove to work, and what you're going to do for lunch, what you're going to do after work, all that is upside down. And that's very hard for our brains, because we live to organize, and we get through by organizing. Being isolated, like we said earlier, being immobile is very tough. We got to find ways to move, a loss of a sense of safety, and a loss of a sense of purpose. So none of you listening today should have a loss of a sense of purpose. You're very, very important. critically important. Thank you again for what you're doing. But a lot of the people we support are really devastated by having lost their jobs. So I was talking with one of my groups, and so many people were so upset, saying, will I ever get my job back? Do they want me back? They said they didn't need me anymore. That job had become their identity, and that was such a source of pride and joy. And sorry, we're closed, or we're not closed, but we only have essential people. That's been really tough. One guy I know with autism really went through so much because that was part of his routine. And he was just so upset. And he was convinced that everybody was going to work without him. He worked at Marshall's because throughout his life, he'd been excluded from things. So his very brilliant job coach took a walk with him and had him see inside the store was closed. But then the store opened back up and they didn't ask him back. And that was really devastating for him. And finally, just recently, they asked him back, but his job was stocking the shelves, and they don't need anything stocked because they didn't sell too much. So his job is wiping down the carts, right? And he's still a little upset about that because he's like, well, I'm not really making a difference and I'm not really needed. And we keep telling him, no, that's really important. You might be saving lives there, But it's tough. At least he got his job back. In my group, in that one group, they were just going on and on. Will we ever get our jobs? Right? And other people keep asking, will the day program ever open back up? Because as mixed feelings as so many people have about day programs, for many that's their life, and they have roles there that are very purposeful, and it has been hard to be shut out of it. People feel trapped. So antidotes. Yay, let's start moving forward. Let's talk about positive change. Can you control what's going on? No. Can you control what you're doing? Yes, yay. You can make a list every day of things you want to do. And, by even just, I had 4 or 5 there. Now I'm going to say 2 or 3. Let's not put too much burden on ourselves, right? Nobody's at their best right now. I know one psychologist said, make a list of 10 things you need to do and then do 3 of them. I like that. But you can move your own life forward. Do things that you enjoy. Make a list of fun things too. Connect with people, like we said earlier, so important. Move, dance, walk, do yoga. I tell everybody to do yoga, but I don't do it because I'm lazy and it looks like it hurts. But I do take walks. But we got to move, engage in safe practices, talk to safe people. We all have people, hopefully, that you can talk to and you can just dump on, right? That you can just both share feelings. Don't talk to those ones who tell you everything you're doing wrong. Cut them off. Now's a good time to do it. Oh, sorry. My phone keeps dropping your calls. So, but find those people and reconnect with those people who make you feel emotionally safe. That's really important. And we all have that friend somewhere that we haven't talked to for so long. That's the person to call. That's the person to reconnect with. Limit your news intake. This is really helpful. Believe me, I was totally addicted, and I would be working, then running over the TV, working, running over the TV. Not good for your brain. Structure your intake of news. It doesn't mean you don't do it, but limit it. It should be limited, because otherwise it does get back into that subconscious, freaks out your amygdala, and there you are again, cycling. Oh no, oh no. So we have to limit that. Find ways to make a small difference. I don't have to tell you that. You guys make great differences with what you do. Then let's take a minute and give ourselves a break. That is really important. Sometimes it's okay if the only thing you did today was breathe. Nobody is at their best right now, and that's okay. This is a very tough time. Don't be so hard on yourself. Lower your demands. Breathe. Get through that day. Don't set your goals up here. Don't be so hard on yourself. And don't beat yourself up afterwards when you didn't do everything you said you would do and change everything you were going to change. It's okay. Just stay alive. That's a great accomplishment right there. Square breathing. I'm going to teach this to you. So you picture a square, or else you can look at something that's square. Start on the top left-hand corner. You breathe in for 4 seconds. Take a deep breath in. Then you hold it for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you breathe out for 4 seconds. Then you hold that and get all that stale air out of you for another 4 seconds. Get it all out. Then start again. Deep breath in. Hold. Breathe all the way out. Hold. That way we get all the stale air out of us. Breathe in fresh air. And just that breathing triggers what we call our parasympathetic nervous system, which calms us down on a deeper level. Really calms us. So in a way that our rational brain can't. So breathing is so important. And then also acknowledge how strong you are. A lot of times we focus on our weaknesses, right? What's wrong with me? What I didn't do, what I should have done. Why didn't I do this 5 years ago? Then I wouldn't be in this situation, right? Think about your strengths and think about how strong you are. Eleanor Roosevelt says, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. Yes, you can. You can do this. You've done it. You can keep doing it. So believe in yourself, right? That's so important to acknowledge your inner strength. Stop looking at what you've done wrong and start looking at what you've done right and celebrate yourself. So it's also a time to reflect, right? To reflect on the things that are good. So I have a girlfriend who was always complaining about her husband, like to the point where we were about to take up a collection, a GoFundMe for a good divorce lawyer, because we just couldn't hear her any longer. Yeah, he doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. Yeah, we know. Just break up with him. Can't stand it. And, in about April, I'm gonna lower my blinds so you don't have to look at weird light reflections on my face. That's a little, it didn't work anyway. All right, little distracting. There we go. So my friend called me up and she said, Dave is pretty good. He does a lot around the house. Now let me tell you, she's a type A personality, travels, goes, does, and he's a very sweet kind of homebody type of guy. Little, on the boring side, according to her. Stable is good. But so she just started to see for once how wonderful he was. And she's like, he does so much I didn't realize. He's really something. He has helped me. And, he's done a lot for our son. And, he's really taken care of a lot of stuff. Hallelujah. So COVID enabled her to just stop and look at the good. What's right? What's right about her life? And that's a beautiful thing, to see what's right about your life and to see what the real blessings are, and take a minute and just appreciate that. And then congratulate yourself. You need to celebrate yourself. You are amazing. If I told you you'd be doing all this, you'd say, no way, there's no way I could do all this. You're doing it. And remember, this too shall pass. That's the one constant we have in life, is change. And we know, so much good news lately, so much good news about the vaccine. Things are going to get better. We're going to get through this. And there's a beautiful saying by Nichiren Daishonin, a Buddhist scholar, that winter never fails to turn to spring. Right? So as long as this winter is going to be, it will turn to spring. And as long as this pandemic has been, we will get through it. We will get through it. And we're going to be stronger for it, and we're going to be better for it. Right? So what do we need to heal? We need to keep ourselves safe and to feel emotionally safe as well. And that emotional safety makes a big difference. We need to stay connected, and we need to find ways to move ourselves forward. So I was doing a series of interviews with moms with kids and adult kids with disabilities and dads, right, Jeff? So, and they were really beautiful. And one mom said, I was so moved by every interview, what people had accomplished and been through. And one mom said to me, when I asked her, what is your advice for people facing the long journey of raising a child with a disability? You know, when they first get their diagnosis, what's the best advice you can give? And she said, find a hobby that's just for you. Do something just for you. And it's nobody else's. And schedule time for yourself. And I love the idea of scheduling time. So it was so hard for me, you know, to make time for myself. But I started to realize during COVID that I have to put it on my schedule. I have to say, oh, I've got an appointment at 3. Yes, that appointment is for me to walk around my neighborhood, but it's still an appointment, you know, because you can't go. And with COVID, a lot of us working from home, we're doing more, right? You have more emails, you have more stress, you have so much and less mobility, less interaction. It's very stressful. So you make those appointments for you, schedule time for you. I believe that there's 3 factors of resiliency for COVID, 3 resiliency factors that are really important. One is optimism, the second is engagement, and the third is creativity. So you want to first make sure you're safe, stay connected to people, empower yourself to do things for you, and then we're going to build optimism, engagement, and creativity. Yes. So optimism. I have learned that optimism isn't just a trait you're born with, it's a muscle you can develop. And I'm happy to know that because I was born a pessimist. I was like, oh no, I think those were my first words. Well, if you knew my parents, no, I'm only kidding. But, you know, it's been a long road being Karyn. And I had to learn to be an optimist because I read books that told me if you're an optimist, you do better in life. A great book is Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman. And he was the first to talk about gratitude journals, which Oprah really talked a lot about, writing down every day 3 things you're grateful for, just writing a journal of what you appreciate. Think about a time in your life that was much worse and how you've come through it and how strong you are. Again, to really celebrate your strength. Look at what you've been through. You're not that weak little snivelly person you might think you are. You're amazing. And we need to point that out to the people we support as well. Look at what they've been through. Look how amazing you are, right? That helps so much to hear that kind of feedback. List ways in which you've grown and changed. Celebrate your growth. Martin Seligman says to write a thank you card to someone you feel grateful for. I found that to be wonderful. And it celebrates you as well as is a beautiful gift to somebody to get a thank you card. And give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. That's a theme here today. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be all those things maybe somebody told you once you should be. You just have to be you. And that's the most important thing to be. And that's a wonderful thing. Gratitude studies. The Emmons Lab looked at gratitude and appreciation and how that increases optimism. They had 3 groups of people. The first group, they all 3 had to write in journals, right? So the first group wrote down everything that was good. They told them, we don't write anything except what was really good that happened to you. The second group had to write down just the facts. So like the first group would write, had a great lunch, took a nice walk, talked to a friend. The second group had to write down the facts, had a great lunch, got a bill I didn't want to pay, talked to a friend, realized I needed a car repair, you know, and whatever. And then the last group just writes down what's wrong, right? So they didn't write anything good, saw there was a bill I had to pay, saw the car needed to be fixed. After a matter of weeks, the people that were journaling just the positive, so these are randomly picked groups, those that were journaling just the positive reported feeling happier, more alert, having higher levels of energy, and being more focused and more enthusiastic about their life. Like when they ask them, how do you feel about your life? Oh, I feel good. The people that wrote just the facts actually became less optimistic. And the people that just talked about the problems became very pessimistic and tired and reported feeling more hopeless about their life. So we have the power to change our view and change our energy level and our focus through focusing on what's good and what's right and celebrating the good stuff. You know, we as human beings tend to focus on what's wrong, right? Oh, I got to solve this problem. I got to think about that. I got to do that. And what's right is great because you don't have to worry about it. But stop and celebrate what's right. You know, I kept saying, I read all this stuff. I knew I should do a journal. But at the end of the night, I just wanted to drink a glass of Chardonnay and watch a little TV. I used to say I wanted to watch Netflix and chill, but then one younger person in my audience said, stop saying that, unless that's what you're doing. And it wasn't what I was doing. So I just relax and then I'm done. I don't want to write anything. But what I started doing when COVID started, I thought, well, I better be an optimist because I'm not feeling too happy, is I started doing my optimism, my gratitude journal in the morning. So every morning I do my chanting. I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as a Buddhist, and then I write down what I'm grateful for from the day before, all the positive things. And it makes me stop and think, wow, there were good things, and wow, this is a good life, and I am so fortunate, and to kind of celebrate that. And it's made a big difference for me as well. As I said, I'm a born pessimist, so I've been working on this. And I have felt so much more optimistic to the point where I said, I'm going to do a talk about COVID. Here I am. I've been doing them for months now. Another thing is to help each other to be optimistic. So you know how at Thanksgiving, some families will go around the table and say something they're grateful for. Other families like my own just argue about politics, but we couldn't do that this year because we kept that Zoom short. But so I have been really advocating where people are in group home settings or where you're living together as a family. Every day, if it's at a meal time or you want to have a special circle time, every day at dinner maybe, just stop and everybody say something they appreciate. So we help each other be more grateful and have that optimism. And that's a really wonderful thing to do. And it does increase. My friend is doing it with her family, and she's like, she can see a change in her kids, just making everyone stop and appreciate. Let's just take a minute, right? There really is so much to appreciate. And in some ways, COVID has shown us that, right? Things we took for granted, that, you know, we are so lucky. We're lucky to have each other. We're lucky to be here. Life is so precious. So take a minute and appreciate it. And celebrate. Celebrations are really important. My daughter's birthday was in August, and she said to us, well, we're not going to celebrate it because it's COVID. And we're like, oh, no, we are going to celebrate it. So her boyfriend's mom has a pool, and I called her up, said, yeah, can we all come to the pool? We'll stay distant, you know, chlorine, that should be safe. So we had a nice socially distanced birthday party, and I told her, you're not getting out of celebrating because celebrations are so important right now. Yes, we have to do them differently, but they're really critical. I know, you know, however we do it, we want to stay safe, but we don't want to just forget and write things off and say, forget it. It's a horrible year. I'm not even bothering. And that's so relevant with the holidays coming up, right? To find ways to make it a wonderful holiday, regardless. So my family, what we're doing, my daughter had the idea. She said, well, we should just do Christmas in July. So we actually are going to do Christmas in July. We're going to have a tree, and we're going to have the reindeers, and we're going to have a big party outside in July and give gifts then. So everybody's going to do gifts inside their own household on Christmas, but then we're going to have a big family get together and do our gifts and do our celebrating in July. So engagement. I want to stay active, play games. Who knew that I'd be saying play games? I love playing games, but I was always kind of guilty about how much I love playing little games on my phone. I love it. Turns out it's good for you. Your brain rewires when you play. It actually gives you a fresh burst, right? There's a wonderful book by Stuart Brown called Play. Play brings you into the here and now. And he says, you know, play can become a doorway to a new self. Play family games, play games with each other, play whatever. Take out games you used to love, but playing actually refreshes your brain. And it's really important. And then living creatively. Living creatively, I don't have to tell you about, because by now all of you have figured out that workaround, right? I know you have, because we're all doing things differently, and you're a very creative bunch of people because you're all still here and you haven't checked yourself into a hospital and gotten just lost it. No, you're making it. You're going forward. The other thing is that I know that all of you are very caring people because you're in this field. You wouldn't be here, right? Family members, supporters, case managers, staff, professionals, all of you. You're all professionals, but every single one of you, you're compassionate people. And Tanya Singer talks about compassion-based action. And she says, you have to really develop a strong core of self, because if you just give and give, but you don't have a boundary and you don't give to yourself at the same time, and you don't have that balance of giving to yourself and to others, you're going to have compassion fatigue and you're going to burn out. So you've got to find ways to take care of yourself, to give to yourself, to have that time to rejuvenate and revive. That's so critical. Take care of yourself. Make those appointments for you. Put it on your calendar. It counts. And here's a little technique called the butterfly. You cross your arms over your chest and it's an EMDR technique. You pat back and forth. So you can do your square breathing when you want to just de-stress. But this you're going to do if there's a certain issue that's really stressing you out. Do this, breathe, think about the issue, and it will shrink in its terror. You will find yourself kind of processing it. This will help you calm down if you're really freaking out about something, doing the butterfly. And finally, here's Nelson Mandela. There's someone that was trapped 27 years in prison and the victim of racism. So much that he went through. And there's Daisaku Ikeda, a great Buddhist scholar who's very wise. He's written up 150 books. And he says, those living in an age of crisis must become the pioneers of a better age. And what does that mean? That means that we need more humanity. And that I feel you all in the world of supporting people with disabilities, you are the people who are setting the example for the rest of the world, because you're the humanists. You're the ones who know that people count. You're the ones putting people first. You know, tomorrow you're doing your one-page, profiles, and you're amazing because you care so much. You are person-centered. You're here. And so don't underestimate your role in this world and your leadership, because people need to see those who are putting people first. We must become an age of humanism, and that's how we will move forward. And I believe you are the real leaders of that movement. No pressure. So thank you so much. At this point, I have just a few minutes to take any questions that anyone would like, and I will stop sharing my screen. And thank you for your attention. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harvey, for a very, very powerful presentation. Really just a big lift off my shoulders. I really, really appreciate your message. And we know you're going to need to go in a minute, probably to your next presentation. But if there was a question, we probably have time for maybe not more than one, probably. And please put your questions in the chat.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I can just say a lot of people were sharing things that they've been doing in ways that they've been able to connect with other people. So I love the creativity of everybody. Everybody's just saying thank you.
Oh, that's
Very empowering. You reminded us of what we need, what we all know, but we need those reminders for
Yeah.
sure.
I do too.
So it's good for you too, right? Like you're
It
hearing
is.
yourself talk.
It is.
So thank you everybody for joining. There's a link in the chat box for an evaluation. We'll also be following that up with an email. We hope to see you tomorrow where you'll learn about creating a one-page profile for your loved ones. So we hope that you will join us for that and check out the rest of our upcoming trainings. Do you have anything else you want to share, Jeff?
No, just thanks again for coming. And we hope to see you next time at another one of the presentations.
So if you
Well,
have
take care of
questions,
yourselves.
my email is out on all of the promotional stuff. So you can email me. I see some stuff happening over here in the chat box. Shoot me an email if you have a question that we didn't get to, and I will make sure it gets answered.